Hi. The conditional offer of an opportunity to study in a US university by the USAFI, United States Education Foundation in India, Madras office, was a welcome thing, absolutely, undoubtedly. But my friend Krishna Prasad Sridhar in the psychology department got an offer from USAFI, but without any condition. In fact, he had a financial support. In my case, the for International Education, New York, which is a US government agency, will have to find money to support my first year of study in the United States. Well, then I get a letter from USAFI in New Delhi and signed by one K.S. Nair, asking me to get ready and be prepared to take off to my higher studies mission under the USAFI program by middle of June 1972. But then the problem is the last line or sentence in the letter said, USAFI did not get the word from Institute of International Education about the availability of funds. So that rider always stood, and Nair also wanted me to file a set of application for admission, writing in my choices for admission. Well, in spite of the rider in the admission or the condition of offer, I filled up the forms and opted for Syracuse University Geology Department in upstate New York as the first option. If and when I get admitted, I get financial support. The second option was then to University of Texas at Austin, where Robert Folk, a world-renowned sedimentologist, was working. And of course, in Syracuse, there was Dr. Miriam, of International Association of Mathematical Geologists, and its Secretary General, whose name was introduced to me by M.A. Romanova when she was in the geology department at the Kerala University campus in Trivandrum, Karyotam. So I just, it was not a peaceful state for me in my mind, because, there was the uncertainty of the funding. So, month of March went on after K.S. Nair's letter and fulfilling whatever the K.S. Nair wanted me to do. Then Mr. N.T.K. Nair is still around. I was a good friend. I told N.T.K. about my dilemma. And then he said, hey, Vikramji, let us go and see Dr. K.M. George. K.M. George was then M.M. in the encyclopedia of the government, that department. He was the director. And K.M. George is actually a man who was educated in the United States. And he had written a travelogue on, about the United States, etc. And he lived in Korangodan Junction. In fact, it is very close to the junction on the Pattam Road. And one evening, those days we have had the habit of calling before dropping into a house. We always go and gate crash. So NJK and I just somehow, I don't know how we went there. We went to the gate and they got into that house, and then rang the bell. After 5 minutes, Dr. K.M. Dad came out. We wished him, and he offered us to sit in his front porch. We all of us sat there, and then started asking NJK, how is your work, etc., etc. And then NJK said, KM Jal sir also asked, who am I? Then NJK did the so-called introductory talk about who I am, etc. And then why we went there to see KM Jal. And that is exactly, the point exactly is to figure out from K.S. Nair whether there is a chance of my getting a financial assistance to go to United States for the higher studies. So this, I told the background, etc. And then KM Jal sir said that he will call K.S. Nair and figure out what exactly would be the outcome. And he said, next day or the day after next, he will get the word from K.S. Nair. Well, it was very useful. We had he offered us a cup of tea, and we had a tea, and this departed. And then on the second day, I think, of our visit to Dr. K.M. George, in his house, K.M. George called NJK Nair and told or conveyed this news about the reply from K.S. Nair. K.S. Nair said, in all probability, the Thrivikramji will get a financial support. So it is better that he gets ready to go to United States. So then the next thing I had to do in the month, it was actually month of May 1972. I had filed anyway for a passport, issue of passport to then there were only 4 passport offices in India: Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta and Madras. So I had filed through the Kerala Travels application for issue of a passport. And that those days it took something like 3 months. Then Kerala Travels told me that I better go to Chennai, Madras, and visit the office and make a request to expedite the issue of the passport, because I am planning to go away soon. So that I can do only when I get the firm offer. So I waited actually, and by the end of, let us say, April or early days of May, first or second week of May, I get a letter, the so-called announcement that yes, I have the funding by IIE. That is one. Number 2, they have also arranged for the admission for a graduate program in the Syracuse University, where Professor Merriam was the head of the department, and as decided by me in the option, in the list of universities I have opted for, the first option. That the news was too good. I just told Professor Menon, went into his office and said, sir, my fund is clear, I can go. Then the next thing is, the letter also said, just keenly wait for the next letter, which will enable me to get a visa from the Madras consulate. So I waited for 1 more week, and by that time I got a letter, again, a set of letters actually, actually 1 letter and several copies, 3 or 4 copies of it, from the Institute of International Education, New York, and that's all I needed to get a visa. But then what I did, I collected all these papers and made a trip to Chennai or Madras. I went there. The Kerala Travels advised me to go to the passport office, show the letter, and get the passport issued. So I was prepared to stay there for at least 1 week, because if I have the passport, what will happen is I can provide one of these letters along with the passport, produce along with the passport to the Madras consulate for the issuance of a visa. Because that is the letter on funding related matters that qualifies me to ask for a visa, or request for a visa stamped. So I went to the passport office. As soon as I arrived in Chennai. Of course, place of residence in Chennai is always people's lot. And then I took a bus to the passport office. Then I met assistant passport officer or some functionary, a mid-level functionary, showed this letter and made a request that I may be issued a passport within a couple of days. Then this man said, okay, don't worry, we will arrange for the passport. And, asked me to give in writing, something about, why I have to have a passport by, jumping the queue, etc. So I did that, citing the letter, reference to this letter from Institute of International Education. Then, the third day evening, I got the passport. The next thing is, okay, well, one of the conditions is that I have to have a medical examination done by a doctor identified or empaneled by the Madras Consulate and in the city of Madras. I got the list and I contacted one of those people, one of the doctors, and he gave me an appointment for me. And the next day with the passport, etc., there was no need for the passport at all. I went over to that man and he checked me for about 20-30 minutes and said, okay, fine. And he also told me that a medical report will directly go to the consulate. Okay, then I went to the consulate. Going to the consulate for a visa is a Herculean task in those days, at least in the US embassies or consulates are concerned. The people in the People's Lot told me, okay, sir, what you do is you go to at least by 6:30, you be there in the gate of the consular office and you cannot get into the compound because it will be locked. You are not allowed to get in beyond a certain point and wait there. Otherwise, if you went there at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, there will be at least 200 people waiting in a queue with the hope of getting a visa. So I went in there, and even though I went in there at 6:30, there was already people standing in for others or standing in order to sell that position in the queue for a price. So I did not do that. I didn't have to do that because I was sufficiently early there and I was the 15th or 20th position in the queue I had. So, by sharp 9 o'clock, a door was open. It is not a motorable gate. A small door was open, wicket gate sort of thing. I went in there. There was a security man, a white guy, and then I showed the papers. He asked me to go in, and when I went in, I met in the first desk a white man. He said, "Good morning. How are you?" And I presented the papers. And of course, I have no problem in getting a visa because I have the support of the International Institute for Education. So I gave this passport along with a copy, one copy of that letter. And this gentleman told me that, well, congratulations, enjoy your study and stay in the United States. You will get the passport visa stamped on it within 5 working days in your home address. I said thank you and walked away. Then of course my next mission was going back to Thrivikramji, my home. So I went to People's Lounge. I had a lunch on my way, and then what I did was I just walked into the Kerala Travels office opposite of the Ekmore station. And just went there and introduced myself as a friend of Mr. Anthroper, who was working in the Thrivikramji headquarters of the Kerala Travels. Then I was offered to sit down, and the manager rather, asked me why I was there. I said, obviously I wanted a ticket, but I don't have the money. I wanted a ticket by tomorrow morning in an Indian Airlines those days. And he said, yes, no problem. And then he wanted me, the details. I gave a copy of the letter, and out of which he took my name correctly and wrote it in the ticket. And then asked me to pay the money. That is only 90 rupees, imagine those days, money to Kerala Travels office in Thiruvananthapuram, opposite of University College, where Hotel Horizon now stands. Well, the journey was very interesting. I had to catch a flight leaving Chennai, Madras, Meenambakam Airport around at 6 o'clock, so that I had to be holding the checking in by one hour before. That is like 5 a.m. in the early morning. And of course, I was told by this manager that I better get there at least by 5 o'clock. There will be frequent trains early morning, the suburban train, which that I can catch from the Egmore station, at the far end of the Egmore station, the last platform in the Egmore station. So I told my friend, the front office in the People's Lot, that I am leaving. I settled my dues there, and I wanted them to wake me up by 3:30 a.m. so that I will not miss the flight. So then what I did, I slept comfortably. By 3:30, the phone rang, and the guy at the other end said, "Sir, this is 3:30 now." And okay. That alert was good enough. I went in and took a shower and got dressed up, packed up everything, and then by about quarter after 4, walked across the road and then into the platform, into the station, purchased the ticket to Meenambakam. There is no station in Meenambakam by name. It is called St. Thomas Mount. That is what the ticket issuing clerk told me. So I got a ticket for St. Thomas Mount, and then walked to the railway platform, electric train platform, and waited there. By about 4:30, a train arrived from Beach toward Tambaram. I jumped into it, but unfortunately, the train was practically empty. Because in each coach, there were only 2 or 3 people seated. That was also a problem for me, in the sense I have not seen St. Thomas Mount during early morning or night time. Yes, St. Thomas Mount, I had to, then I immediately inquired, how far away is St. Thomas Mount in Tamil, and this gentleman said it will reach there in another 20 minutes. So I told this guy that, please remind me before we reach the St. Thomas Mount. So he said, no problem. And I sat there, and, I was reminded of the next station, which is St. Thomas Mount, by the fellow passenger. I stopped, the train stopped, I jumped out actually. Then, St. Thomas Mount is right across the Meenambakam Airport, or the terminal building of the Meenambakam Airport. What I did, you had to walk down actually from the platform 1 floor down to reach the car park, etc. And then walk across the highway, southbound road from Madras city, and then walked across in the garden to the compound, and then of course it was very busy, in the sense so many taxis and the cars were coming in, because to take people who wanted to catch the early morning flights. Well, first time I was standing in a queue in a airport terminal, in front of the booking clerk. Of course, there was no hassle about identifying which flight is where, etc., which is the queue. And then when my turn came, I presented the ticket. I was given a boarding pass and asked to sit down somewhere, by a hand signal. There I will be called in by some person when the flight is ready and it is time for boarding. Of course, by that time I sat there and I had a cup of coffee, of course, nothing else to eat. And finally, we boarded the aircraft. There is a bus that will take you near the aircraft. It was a HS 748 aircraft with 2 what is called propeller engines, and maybe 30 or 40 people alone could travel, or even 21, I guess. It is a very small aircraft, a narrow body aircraft, where I could take my handbag into the aircraft, and there is a rack to keep what is called all our hand baggages with a door to lock. And of course, I don't have to lock it. The air crew, the cabin crew will do it. Of course, well, there were only 2 people in the cabin. Well, I got a seat in the number 2 row, a window seat. Surprisingly, I saw a gentleman, which was Madhu, was seated in the window seat in the first row. That was the first time I ever saw Mr. Madhu as a person and not as an actor in the celluloid. Well, the plane had a stop in Madurai after about 1 hour, and after another hour, around 8, after 8, the plane landed in Trivandrum, and I took a taxi to reach home before 9 o'clock. So that was how I got my visa stamped